Hello and welcome to the bi-weekly meeting podcast for the OWASP Top 10 for Large Language Model Applications. If you'd like to stay up to date with our project, please click subscribe. And if you enjoy the content or have any questions, please feel free to comment and share. Now, on to our meeting.
So hey, Rock, welcome. Thanks for introducing yourself on the chat there. If we got anybody else new this week, feel free to type in there and say hi.
Hello, everyone.
I think we got D as well. Welcome. But we got a lot of stuff to cover today, so we're just going to dive in. So it doesn't matter whether you're new or a veteran. Please just dive in and contribute to the discussion. So usually what we do here, we get some updates. We'll talk some about V2 of the list. I don't think we have ads today, so I'll do my best ads impression.
Unfortunately, you do. Hello.
Oh, we do. All right, good.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Sorry, man.
No, that's good. So we'll definitely talk about V2 of the list there, because I think we're actually coming to the point where we've got most of the material and it's about ramping down and organizing and selecting, but we'll get into that. And then we have all of these other initiatives that are popping up. So we got a lot of things to talk about from the various leads. So we'll just dive in. This is the original roadmap schedule. I'd say by and large, we've kept somewhat close to this. If you look at kind of the date now, as we approach September 1st, it was the idea that we would create these new entries. We did create a bunch of them. We did voting. We published the voting. We did a number of meetings, and those meetings are published, the videos, as well as some of the outcomes in terms of down selecting to a number that was more than 10, but still more reasonable to work with. We assigned some leads to those. Those have been iterating with the idea of getting to the point where, hopefully if we stay on track this month in September, we'll really be kind of downshifting down to something that looks like the top 10 and move into a cleanup mode and get ready to announce something, hopefully still in October. But I think the most important thing is to get it right. So we'll talk about that. Ads can give us an update on how he's feeling about some of the moving parts there. But I think getting a version of this list out before the end of the year, something we could call the 2024 list, I think would be great. Retroactively, we could just call V1 the 2023 list and this the 2024 list, and it would start to seem like all the other top 10 lists, the way that they demarcate these things. With that, just one personal note, I was joking about it earlier. I have missed a number of meetings recently, so I do appreciate a number of the other co-leads stepping up and leading some of the meetings. From a personal perspective, had a lot going on. Professionally, I think people saw I posted my company got acquired. We merged it with another company. Still a lot of work around that, but it's settled down into something more normal where I now know what my meeting cadences are. And I did ask to move the meeting, and everybody was good about contributing things that would work. So hopefully this new time works for everybody. So just appreciate it. Wanted to share my appreciation for all the co-leads who kept things moving forward while I've been a bit tied up, but I do intend to be back and involved a lot through getting V2 of this list out, and as well as getting some of these other initiatives ramped up and getting the first versions out. So with that, we'll go through the functional lead reports. And
this is where
is this John?
Yes, I jumped
looked
you
like John.
I don't know if you remember on one of the previous calls, we went through the dilemmas we were having with autonomous agents, and had the candidates there that was voted and merged with manuals about autonomous agents at large, in addition to excessive agency. So we had a lot of conversations there, including with Andy and others, and we have a nice working group now, a few calls there. And I think the consensus back then, we had three options. One that said, let's carry on as it is, but update the entries, which is option one. And I'm recommending let's consolidate them together to create space, and let's actually replace update excessive agency, but create a new entry to replace plugins, because no one's interested in plugins, with autonomous agents. And so after a lot of conversation there, this is my recommendation here, and I discussed this with Andy and others, and we're in agreement that for sure it's an area that is rapidly becoming, there's another ChatGPT, but I promise you it wasn't. I put it there, rapidly becoming a new area of focus. I think it's definitely something that people talk about. It's definitely something that people beginning to explore as a new paradigm of how we do. And it introduces very, very different semantics there, not just the constrained agentic workflow, but the full conversational autonomy where one LLM will influence the other. However, I think we're at the stage where we need to understand it better and provide guidance rather than making it an entry. And I think the entry that the candidate I put there is a good basis to start that conversation. But I don't think we're at the point where we need to have a dedicated entry for this, because I don't think we kind of narrow down the exact security concerns. I think we need to do more work on that. I think really the balancing act is not miss that train, have a voice as a group, have an opinion around the evolution of autonomous agents and how it affects generative AI, without becoming an entry that just talks about the technology area. So what I'm recommending is that we are updating the excessive agency entry to reflect all those new developments that I talked about, other related entries too, including supply chain, because you have things like on-device model with agents and other related risks. Update the plugin to extensions to make it less vendor specific. We had Llama with Llama tools. And that is for version 2, but at the same time, as I said, we mustn't just stop talking about autonomous agents. I'm proposing an autonomous agent initiative that takes the current working group, the people that are part of that, carry on the research. I'll put the submissions code using the template, and then publish that research and the positioning paper soon after version 2, so that the conversation continues. And I think in my mind, that's the best balancing act between not missing the train of something new and changing, things like how human oversight and human in the loop will scale in those things. These are things that we need to understand, but they're not concrete vulnerabilities. So that's why I'm proposing this as a balancing act, and I'll pause there.
Yeah, and I think since a lot of the architecture is shifting in this space too, one question I have in my little bit of a recruiting hat, put that on for a second, is as far as do we have who we need in the community, or are there some other folks that we should also target through my recruitment that I'm doing for sponsorship and engagement? So that's a question I have for you, John, because you're starting to get some feedback, and so just want to make sure we've got as much of the right folks in the room, or whether we need to do some work on that.
I think we should definitely include people in that agency initiative. I think we should reach out and bring as many people as we can to review and participate. I can see Jason and Dreamforce releasing autonomous agents at So again, let's talk to all these folks that they're doing agents, but I still think we need to understand this before we make an additional entry. And I say that as someone who proposed an additional entry.
Hey, John, I'm curious, and don't take this question as leading. I'm actually really curious. You talk about renaming plugins to extensions. I think we can talk about the naming there. I definitely think getting this beyond GPT plugins is important, because I don't think those are interesting anymore. But where do things like LangChain fit in this? Is that, because it's, maybe I'm off base, but it seems like that.
LangChain is a framework, and it fits in both. So they have come up with LangFlow, I think, or LangGraph, sorry. That's something where you can build agentic workflows. So that's one of the parts of kind of how you build agents. But at the same time, they have, when you build an application with them, you can have plugins and extensions to the model. And they have those constructs where you can build a platform like OpenGPT and plug in those different extensions there. So it's a framework really that offers.
Mhm.
And I see Andy, you have your hand there too.
Yeah, just to add a bit more color to that one. Yeah, we kind of agreed on that term extensions because it was a bit more generic. Because yeah, ChatGPT called them plugins. LangChain called them tools.
Yeah.
Microsoft in their AI or Copilot for Sentinel call them skills. Basically, we're just talking about some other code that a AI agentic framework calls in response to the output of a language model.
That makes sense.
And yeah, so that is our generic term extensions. And I guess it then begs the question whether, as part of that entry, we kind of need to go into the detail of, okay, what do we actually mean by some of these terms? Or whether that's something we keep for a glossary, because I know we had a glossary for V1, but okay, is someone actually going to go and check a glossary? I just wonder how much extra information we add into those entries to aid understanding, but also conscious to make sure that we don't end up turning each entry into like a 5-page essay.
Yeah, I would say my gut reaction, and we can get into editing on these things later, would be that pretty early on, you would say we're defining extensions as things like list off a few of them just to get people's head in
Yeah.
space. It doesn't need to be comprehensive, but a few of the big ones, and then people would kind of understand.
Yeah, I have to, sorry to butt in, I have to agree. I'm a big fan of single source of truth, and I think we should just keep it concise and consistent because that's what's been our recipe for success. But I agree with what Andy's saying. I assume we should have a single source of truth.
Jason?
I was just also going to agree, and just to throw another term in there, we call those actions, and I've seen that term in a couple of other places as well. So I think defining it and giving some examples of what other people are calling it, it's definitely useful.
Mm-hmm.
No, fine. Thanks for the steer, folks. And actually, well, I've got the mic here as well, just in terms of updating some of the entries here. I've obviously made a start at rewording, renaming, adding bits into the excessive agency entry. What's the kind of workflow for feeding that in? Is that through GitHub pull request at this stage, or sharing a Google Doc around? Have we got that level of process defined just yet for V2?
For definitions, you mean?
No, for any updates to entries.
I would defer you to master workload.
If you're like the author or whatever, or vulnerability owner, then yeah, go nuts. There's actually an action item to update the existing ones that will stay.
I think ads, when you get to your section, you might want to just make clear to people like which folders and versions that you're looking at, in case people have kind of lost track. And
yeah, that would certainly be really useful for me. I apologies, I tend to lose track quite quickly when there's lots of different folders and bits and pieces going on.
That's all good. I didn't actually have a section, I'm not gonna lie, but I put quite a bit of it on like the last meeting, I think. So yeah, I'll give me a second. I'll get myself prepared.
What might be even better is ads then maybe just either update one of the wiki pages or put a post in the Slack channel just reminding the leads like, hey guys, these are the ones we're looking at as the masters, and this is your deadline to get in your next set of edits. I think when we're really clear with people on that, they'll generally just fall in line and get it done.
Yeah, cool. Sounds good.
Just to add a little bit to the Andy's question. So I normally use Google for consultation. So if I have at the early stages, and I have a consultation document, I ask people, and then I submit it as a pull request, and then ask people to do pull requests. But
I mean, I think for those of you who are leads before, I don't think we're really changing the process. There's a folder with markdown files, and that's the actual source of truth at the end of the day. So I think we can just publish which folder is containing what we consider to be the promotion spot, and then ads can Make sure that the leads list is up to date and that everybody knows they're a lead on these things and that people are officially affirmatively have accepted that. And if we need to swap anybody out, we will. But other than that, I think in the next little bit, we're going to want to get people to commit to updates so that we can compile the list, see how many we have, see if we need to do any additional voting to sort of rank things in and out of the top 10, then re-rank the top 10 and get this ready to start final cleanup. Okay.
So
All right.
then, oh, sorry, before we I wanted to ask, so we're fine then with this arrangement, and I'll work with Andy to make sure that we align.
Works for me.
The entries there. And Scott, I will submit the proposal for initiative by Friday, and then we can reach out to as many people as they want to participate in that.
Sounds good. Yeah, I found my raise and lower hand, so I was trying to be polite. So,
Okay.
One question I have. So for the folks who are watching this video, do we want to share the slides?
I mean,
yeah,
it's always fine to share the slides.
Yeah.
I was just thinking it might be useful to guide people who might be watching this later.
Yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right. And I think, if you're watching this and you're all crazy about agents, come to the agent version 2 discussion channel in Slack where all the magic happens.
All right.
And the next one is still me, sorry.
Okay.
So standards alignment, a brief update there. So I split it now into external and internal. So we did the submission to the UK government. The good news is they really like the OWASP work, and they agree that actually it will be good to have a cadence of regular calls, including this about the voluntary code that they're proposing. So they said in a couple of months we'll set up something, and I'll involve everyone who wants to be involved. Andy, you're in the UK, so definitely there. And then, like we did, if some of you may remember when that's how the alignments thing started. When we had the version 1, we went out of our way to talk to people and get the feedback. So I'm setting up calls with the people that I got in there. And Scott, I may need your help with OpenSF or Linux Foundation, where we take version 2, the earliest kind of candidate, and take some feedback and create that magic of alignment so that we all speak the same language and we don't constrain each other, of course, but we kind of have an understanding what people are talking about. I mentioned the Coalition for Secure AI that still continues via AI Exchange. And I don't know if Aaron is on the call. He's meeting some people on the on San Francisco on the AppSec. There is a submission for the OECD public consultation on AI risk threshold that I will post. I've already started that with AI Exchange. That feels more suitable to AI Exchange because they have a dedicated AI risk conversation, but I'm sure, people on our group will have use and to contribute to that. And finally, for the external front, I had an interesting call with Tim O'Reilly, who's working actively with some other people on transparency, on how effective is the model evaluation, and that's something actually he was kind of very courteous on the work that we do around transparency, model evaluation. I explained, kind of, though that's not an area that we focus, it definitely affects, and we discussed, the limitations of evaluation. He's happy to work with us on initiatives. And one of the things that I will propose is there is a change of government in the UK. They have plans for regulation. Perhaps we, as OWASP Group, take the initiative and create a coalition of influence, as I call it, where we talk to the governments on some of the concerns that we have and include influential people like Tim. So that's the external part. I think, we're doing well. I think with version 2, that will give us another talking point to go out and reignite the relationships we have with all the other groups. And then the internal, I think something we need to pay attention at some stage, because I keep going and talking to people about alignment, and then we have a pluralism, which is fantastic. So we need to keep it the light touch. And me being on both AI Exchange and LLM helps to promote collaboration. For instance, the Red Team in Krishna, I made the introduction to the team that works on AI Exchange to have that conversation, so we don't end up, publishing contradictory things or overlapping things. Some of that is okay. Scott, you work with Arnish to collaborate on outreach. I don't know if Arnish is on the call actually. We've been discussing that. He thinks it's on Thursday, that's why he's not, And maybe a good idea would be let's have a get together as an AI summit, the OWASP groups, and understand not to constrain each other. We discussed all that. We don't want to change, how OWASP works, but just understand, whether its projects are going so that we know how to collaborate with each other. And that's my update today.
Right.
And I've taken most of the time, so I'll pause.
Yep.
Off you, Steve.
So we're gonna keep moving because I know we do have a bunch of other slides.
Sorry. I just went on.
Updates. No, it's all good.
No, we'll keep them short, so we'll keep them to the point. So, but I do want to go back to your point, John, about the collaboration part. I've been talking with Rob also about things that we might need to do in terms of helping to align the two projects. So I think it's worthwhile to not sort of align, but to find good ways to collaborate so that we're not, as you said, restricting each other, but we do have some insight into where collisions may exist so we can decide whether or not to take those head on or whether or not to manage those collisions. Yeah. So yeah, this is just a reminder slide to go ahead and drop the, if you've got updated events that you're doing, if you're speaking at places, please make sure that you're updating this. We'll be using this for continued outreach so that if we want to go ahead and to pre-announce some stuff, we want to roll it out to the emphasized, channels to make sure that people know about it through social, et cetera. We'll do that. So that's just a quick reminder to make sure keep this up to date. Next slide. So with that in mind, we have a few things coming up. I know I saw a few things that Steve, you put out that you've been doing some interviews with folks, or have some upcoming interviews. So that would be great. I think it would be good too, as we have some of those for the teams that are working on these, who are talking about and speaking out, that we've got some way to kind of communicate that, and he's sharing it here. That way everybody kind of knows what's going on. So if it's not on sometimes things don't always get on the schedule because things happen quickly, but if we can highlight them here, I think that'd be great. So a couple of things I just wanted to highlight. We've got we're continuing our partnership with the RSA conference team. And so we have our virtual summit that's going to be coming up here in September 5th. We also have the OWASP, the AppSec conference that's coming up. And Steve, I think your session I saw was confirmed. I don't know if there are others on the team that are going to be speaking there, because if so, we should probably put together just some guidance we can send out to folks. So I don't know if you know of anybody else, Steve, or whether anybody.
I don't know, which is why I posted mine. I think there's two questions. If anybody else has a session out there, let Scott and I know. The other one is if anybody's going to be in San Francisco for the event, we'd love to have you at the session. Maybe I'll drag you on stage. Beyond that, maybe we want to have some kind of get together of some form, even if it's just at the pub. So for anybody who's going to be attending the OWASP event, let us know, and we can figure out if there are things we want to do around this. Looks like we've got kind of exactly a month until that comes around.
Yeah, and that would be great. So if you guys can just share it out to Steve or myself, that would be great. And then the other piece is we also have, unfortunately, exactly at the same time, but on a different coast, the InfoSec World Conference. So it's actually the same week. We actually have 2 sessions at that conference. So I will be there, and I've been kind of trying to grab Sandy to grab her to come there as well. We also have an opportunity to get together with folks in Orlando, so in the Orlando chapter. And so there'll be more details that we have coming out about that. So we can do both coasts. We can do the West Coast and we can do the East Coast at the same time. So for those who haven't been able to get to one conference, they can catch up with us in the other one. So not ideal that they were the same week, but at least it gives us the ability to get that presence in both locations. There's also an upcoming summit there's also an upcoming AI conference is happening in Boston. I'll share more details about that. They've asked us to kind of be the chair of the security portion of that particular summit. So working to kind of pull together some content to support that activity as well. Lastly, Black Hat, in discussion still, Black Hat London or Europe, sorry. I'm in discussions with the Black Hat conference team. There are some content opportunities. There's also some interest in doing a red teaming workshop there. And so I met with them this week. I hope to have some more feedback by middle of next week, end of next week. That's a little ways off for us, but I'll have some more details about that hopefully next week.
Fantastic. I'm sure both me and Andy will be extremely interested in that.
Yeah, so I know you guys, so I've already kind of in the back of my head, I've kind of penciled some of you guys and a few other folks in for that particular event. And so when we do have some of these sponsored events that the project is getting engaged with and sponsoring, we are able to provide, thanks to our sponsors, some additional funding to offset some of the travel costs if your companies can't cover travel costs. So once we get down to specific events and activities, we have that ability to kind of make sure we get can get folks there in a reasonable time. That doesn't mean steak dinners every night, but that's more like McDonald's. But at least it gets a relief for the speakers to get folks there to support these events.
Well, I see Andy's got his hand up.
Yeah, on a kind of similar note, I was going to say, do we have anywhere where we can basically put our hands up and say, hey, yeah, if there's an ask to speak somewhere on the topic of the project and you're looking for someone, hey, I happen to be very close to London, and John, you're probably not that far away either, right? Just so that, Scott, when you get those asks, you can kind of look up on a little spreadsheet and say, oh yeah, these are the folks that we've got that are in that part of the world, and just kind of shortcut some of the finding of people that way.
Yeah, it's been on my long list of items to do to put together a speakers bureau list. So you're reminding me of a delayed action item that that I need to do. So yes, we'll put together. I'll start that speakers bureau list. I'll make sure it's on my list to do in the next week, so that we can make sure we've got that reference point. Yeah, because it's great to know where everybody is, so that we can make sure we're continuing to get the message out around the project and all the great work that everybody is doing.
Nice. Cheers.
Thanks.
All right.
Good reminder.
Keep going.
Keep going. So this is something I don't know. I don't think Aubrey is joining us today, but we are exploring. Aubrey, are you on board? I didn't see you listed there today.
I don't think he was making it today.
I didn't think so. So just the heads up, this is just something that's in exploration right now. We are looking at expanding. So right now we use our podcast primarily for our meetings as a way to catch up on meetings. So Aubrey and I have been talking about putting together, and a few other folks who've been starting to put together this idea of putting together a regular podcast that gives us the opportunity to talk about these topics that we're all talking about and kind of build a set of content that can be referenceable. So expect some more content and some more discussions on this, because we are looking at, a regular kind of program approach where we would have individual speakers come in and talk about topics. And so pulling on some of you guys and experts around that area to do that. And we're working on sort of the hosting and format. So Aubrey's working on that. But I just want to give a heads up that is something that's in process right now, because I think it'd be a good resource for folks. Steve, I don't know if you want to add anything to that or.
No, we're going to try and work it out. Should be fun. See if we can turn this into a thing.
I'll give a bigger update on sponsorships next week. At Black Hat, we had a lot of good conversations. I have a number of new sponsors that are looking to come on board. And some of them are in process, some of them are in signing. I've got some verbal commits. So we're working through all of those this last week and this next week. Holidays have kind of slowed people down a little bit on some of the stuff. Summer holidays, that is. And so we hope to have this together, and I'll talk a little bit more about when we're going to do a formal program announcement next in our next meeting. Some of the folks are helping us in a couple of interesting ways that'll help out. For example, I've been in touch with Emmanuel about our data initiative, and there are a couple now that are looking at potentially sharing anonymized customer data to give us more data points behind the stuff that we're formulating. So that'll be really good to get that into the project. So we'll have some real world data. Not that we aren't collecting, we're doing our best to collect real world data, but this is going to give us some application of trying to leverage the top 10 and what that looks like in real customer scenarios.
Awesome.
Yeah, and the initiatives, as we talked about more initiatives, we've got the red teaming initiative, yay, green lit. So I know we're getting started on that, and so join in. I don't know if
I think Christian is here.
Yeah, I don't know if Christian is here. If you want to make any comments.
Yeah, I have a slide coming up.
Oh, okay, we'll save it then.
Oh, perfect. We'll save it for that. So,
yep.
Couple little notes. These are in process. We've got the solutions framework doc that's in draft. I put out more input for feedback. Again, the idea here is very simply to try to come up with categories and come up with a landscape. ChatGPT, did you hear that? Of the solutions and how they map. Sort of the approach that through feedback we've taken is to align it around a look at some definition around the LLM ops kind of process, and then align different solutions. The similar, we'll have an online version of it. Sort of Cyclone DX does this a little bit they have highlighted both open source projects that are associated with Cyclone DX. For them, it's obviously focusing on adopting the standard here. We have a little bit different bend that we're trying to focus on solutions to helping in the life cycle, but they have both open source and commercial boxes, tags listed. I shared an example of how that would kind of show up in our website. That's what they do on their website. So something similar to that. Again, providing more resources and that companies and developers and individuals can leverage, while still remaining in a position where we're not really promoting one vendor or over another. It's just a resource for people to turn to.
I'll just throw out a funny anecdote. I have a friend who works at one of the big hyperscalers, and they work with all sorts of ISVs, including security ones. And he says, I keep testing all these new AI security tools, and they all have these options to test against that stupid LLM top 10 thing you work on. Like, what's up with that?
Yep. Yeah, so I know you've had conversations, Steve. I spent a lot of time at Black Hat talking to different companies about implementing and making sure they're implementing this, and then over the top of a lot more have implemented MITRE. Everybody's implemented MITRE. Everyone's doing Atlas, but we're seeing a large proportion of companies doing the top 10, and especially in the penetration testing space, everybody has picked it up, and they have frameworks and pieces that have built well beyond kind of what we've done because they've had to take it to customers. And that's sort of the input I'm hoping to pull back into it. So if we can use this as a reference point for these different solutions that people are using, leveraging the LM top 10, then this can help, I think, everybody can make some better choices and move more quickly. So that's there for input. So jump in and grab some input. Last one is on input is the Center of Excellence doc. This was a draft doc that's been sitting around. I've also not had been getting input into it, trying to get it finalized. So if you guys have want to participate in it, please do jump in. And I'm trying to get this finalized kind of mid-September. Got some great feedback from Sandy and John and others, Heather on it. So just more folks, the better. So we can kind of keep this one rolling. Again, this is really a guide for providing, this came out of some of the work. Well, I think Sweden AI was one of the groups that was asking for some of this, which was some further guidance on how to set up a cybersecurity center of excellence for AI security. And so that's what this is really is all about. And so it's not the perfect guide, but it starts to formulate some of the goals and formulate the organizations and KPIs that people need to think about when doing that. So jump
An
in.
interesting anecdote. I am working on a COE, couple of COE materials for some place, right? And then I saw this one, and this was very helpful. Thank you, Scott. Extremely helpful, right? And very timely, because I'm preparing this one. I have this thing, so I was able to incorporate some of the thoughts. So I might come back with a few feedbacks, what I added more that I would have expected on this one, etc. But thank you, very timely.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so the more, again, this is all about collaborative input. So we're improving the content that we're building. So if you've got taking this and getting some real world feedback, let's get it in and get it improved. We'll run these just like we do all of our materials we're developing. I think for all of the initiatives and all the projects, we'll continue to do updates like we did doing with the top 10. So that's at least what I foresee is that we're going to have these that are going to live over time and get updated as they get used.
All right.
And then I'm going to wrap up here with 2 slides, and then so this is just, we're continuing to make good progress here. We're continuing to see growth on the website. I am actually working with a potential contractor to bring them on board now that we have our sponsors funding to do the last little cleanup on the website, do some SEO optimization, and help us kind of drive a little bit more growth around it, since the website's been kind of developed as a bit of a side project, but I think this will help us kind of tune it to the next level. And then we've got we're continuing to see growth on our GitHub stars, which is great. So keep it up, keep promoting that. We want to find a way to get the growth rate up. We had a pretty aggressive growth rate, and we've kind of slowed down a little bit. So we want to look at some creative ways to get people to check out our GitHub and get more engaged on that front.
I think we need a big celebratory event at 500 stars.
We do. We absolutely do. That 501 star, well, 500, 501, at that point, we should do something. We are on the website. You see 6K there in terms of views. So we started out as around 2.5K. We got to 4K consistently, 5K consistent. So we are making incremental progress, but it's not really the level that I like. And I think that by getting some of the content that we're talking about, the podcast and some of the updated content, that's gonna draw more folks to the site.
I think the thing that's really going to drive that is publishing the new version of the list and some of these other ancillary docs when we announce them. That's going to be
for sure. Yeah. So the 2.0, the list is going to drive it. Anything that we get more content, the more ancillary docs, as you point out, will help be there, plus the resources. So yeah, I think that's right.
And also a one, right? All of them pointing to the same place so that they can leverage each other, right? The upsell, cross-sell type of thing.
Yep.
Yeah, so cross-linking and all the cross-linking we want to be able to do. That's why I'm having another company kind of go through it with a fresh set of eyes to make sure that we've got all the cross-linking set up, and they're good at it. They do it. This is a hobby for me. So, but it's there. So they'll go through and clean up SEO and that sort of thing. So
nice.
we need to do that. There were some asks I had, and this is another thing that I'm not really proposing yet, but it was an ask somebody came to me with. They were asking me whether we had a feed of the latest types of threats we had discovered that they could sign up for. And so I'm just going to leave it there as a couple of asks to think about something. We have a lot on our plate already, but to add something, if people are thinking about something interesting, that could be an interesting thing for us to support, since I'm getting asks for it. Okay, moving on.
We published the newsletter August edition. Interesting. It's about LLM agents. So the one thought is to have a focus on one thing, right? If we put, these are the 10 things that we are doing, suddenly people don't have, so that's why I thought I'll focus on this one. John owes me a bottle of single malt for this one, so I'm having waiting to coming and looking for it. Anyway, the September edition will be red teaming, and October edition probably will be the V2. That's the thought. And like Scott pointed out, we are slowly increasing. We have crossed 1020. We have crossed 1,000 limit. So Steve, another single mall coming up on that one. But yeah, slow, progressing. The one point that I was talking with Scott as well is that, like Steve, you were also saying, we should look at some event that will take it to the next level. Right now, I think we have almost reached the level that we can reach within the kind of activities that we are doing in terms of whether it is outreach or our materials, etc. So we need to think through and say what can take it to the next level.
Mm-hmm. Well,
yeah,
I think
one of the things I was thinking about we could do also is if we're with the sponsors who are coming on board, we want to make sure that we're also kind of driving more visibility. So one of the things we could do is also link this to some of that activity as well.
Yeah. I think that's something, Scott, let's take this offline. I think we need to plan. We need a PR plan for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
I think we've got some big things with potentially, V2 of the list. We're going to get out before the end of the year. That's going to be a major thing. That's going to be one where we need to coordinate with OWASP. We should have them put out press releases and all those other things with it. I think the sponsor thing's a big deal. Some of these other docs as well. So we have a lot of things we could be packing into the last 3 months of the year. And if we do those right, we can take the people coming to view those and we can park them in the newsletter, the LinkedIn group, places like that, so they get sticky and stay with us, and don't just drift off after viewing those things once.
Yep.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity kind of for this last half of the year, PR plan, outreach plan, all that needs to be kind of put together. I've also picked up, I have another PR firm that's offered some free time. That's going to look to kind of also help us on that front, so we can fold them in.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's take this offline. I'm looking at a broader plan that we could make sure we're hitting all the influencers, make sure we're hitting all the right locations.
Yeah.
With this stuff.
Great.
Steve, did you update this thing, or you downloaded a copy? Is it, or because I have
this should be the live one.
Okay. So if you can update it, because I did. Yeah.
Let me try pushing a reload thing here and see what happens.
Because nothing fancy, just a couple of.
No, it's okay. Let me just.
Well, next time you should make it fancy then.
Yep. Coming up. You might have seen some of my slides, right? I have all kinds of strange things in there, and I am always at fight with the branding, corporate branding people, right?
Sorry, I'm just. Krishna, I don't see them, but if you want to share from your desktop, feel free.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I'll just add it. Go ahead. Don't worry about it. Yeah, just let us take the momentum. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Rachel or Brian?
Yeah, I can. So Rachel isn't able to make it today, so I'll
there's Brian. All right.
Nope. Hey, sorry about that. So quick updates from us. So deepfake guidance, our target publication date for that is September 10th. Thanks to those who provided feedback. We will be, Rachel and I will be meeting later this week to go over that, properly format it for the template you gave us, Scott, etc. So responding to AI enhanced cyber attack, continued work on a first draft for that. AI incident guidance, we're having our next meeting on Friday at 11 to help kind of define what is an AI incident for the purpose of the guide. I had a really rich discussion on that last Friday. So if you have any thoughts on that, please do join. If you're not able to make that time, then just please send me a message so that I have some idea of what you think an AI incident should be defined as. So right side, AI for attacks and exploitation research. I was not able to connect with Rachel on the status of Hacker GPT versus Honeypot. She mentioned they were doing a kind of re-kickoff meeting just because Black Hat and COVID had derailed their progress. And then exploit generation using AI. We're continuing to refine the research question deliverable for that, but we're starting to focus on thinking about how to kind of tie it into OWASP Juice Shop as a way to kind of demo AI exploitation of that. So definitely more on that coming. And of course, if you want to get involved in these topics, please join our channel or message us.
Hey, Brian, just one note on the deepfake thing. I think there's a lot of interest in that topic. So what I'd say is having that ready to publish on September 10th sounds great. Let's coordinate a launch plan around that so we get maximum impact from it. You know, we do have all these channels now, the LinkedIn groups and other posting things. So let's coordinate a launch plan for it. You know, make sure it gets onto the website, all these other things. So if you and Rachel can kind of work with like Scott, Aubrey, and I over the next couple weeks, we can figure out how to get maximum impact for that.
Yep, can do.
Awesome.
One question for you, Brian, was I know that we've approved the funding to kind of for the exploit generation. I just want to make sure that you guys know that. I know I shared that with Rachel, so I want to make sure that's not a hiccup for you. If you have any issues on the funding process, raise your hand, and I will chase down any kind of delays or anything to make sure that gets covered in the expense side of it.
Yeah, no. We're aware of the funding and have been doing some calculations in terms of kind of, you know, so part of our planning is just like figuring out how best to use it, you know, right? We want to be prepared in that sense.
Yeah, perfect. Makes sense. And then I think I'll get back to you guys also on, we're going to do just sort of a webinar to talk a little bit about the initiatives that you guys are working on, just kind of a pre-recorded kind of piece, which might be a good piece I was thinking to use as a lead into some of the new content you're going to be producing. So just sort of with you and Rachel, just kind of doing a talking heads kind of thing about, you know, the direction, what you guys are doing as part of this initiative.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yep.
All right.
I think can you go back one slide? Sorry, one more. Yeah, thank you. See, you got the latest one.
All right, cool.
Thank you. Apologies. Anyway, Red Teaming Initiative. Thanks, Scott, for his help. Thank you very much, Scott. Good work. Successful voting for the core team. Thanks for the core team. The final write-up. I know Scott also has the same thing. Sandy is working on a blog. We want to do an introductory board. We will start weekly calls after Labor Day. So that is the plan on that one. AI Exchange, remember, Scott, there was one item which says connect to AI Exchange. John made an intro to AI Exchange teaming person, so that's a good thing. So that's happening. And I think we are planning on some webinars on GRT, right? Red Teaming with Scott as a part of our larger initiative. This might even include some, probably multiple vendors coming together and talking about this particular domain, etc., etc. So we are working on that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I've been negotiating some access to some lab resources in case we want to do some, in case we want to do some head-to-head kind of stuff. So we can talk about that offline. And for any of these, initiatives,
we are in good shape. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and for any of these initiatives, we also want to make sure calling back to John, when you're putting together your initiative, one of the things we want to do when we get these announced is we want to go ahead and do a blog for each of them that describes what they are, so that we have that for each. That's just sort of the general process we want to take on that.
I'll definitely work with you, Scott, on doing that. I think that's a fantastic idea.
Yep.
All right.
Oh, and these were just a couple last things I had on here, and I'll be quick. So questions I keep hearing is, where can I find the meetings? So we probably need, because we have multiple meetings now happening in different groups.
True.
So the thought is, do we want to put a calendar together? I don't have an answer for this yet. I wanted to tee this up as something we just need to think about the best way to do it.
So Scott, what I'd suggest real quick is there's a meeting page on the wiki, which has the info for this meeting and a calendar. Let's just add other ancillary things there. I think ads manages that calendar. We should be able to add some of the other items to it. That way people can subscribe to just one, or we could hang two of them off that page, but let's just do it there.
Yep, that makes
It
sense.
also, though, I think it wouldn't hurt if you wanted to add a meeting page on the real website as well.
Yeah, so we do have a meeting page on it that has this meeting on it, and so I think that we can add the other meetings on there as well.
So let's do this. Let's add them both on the GitHub wiki and the main site, and that way people going to either of those will find the right stuff.
Got it. Yep, makes sense. And then, so I think that's it. The only thing that we have open right now is there's some discussion around the documentation approach for tools. I have a couple of funding items that have come up around that. So I need the documentation team to coalesce on what their strategy is in that space so that we can do that. And I know Seto has some thoughts in that space too. So that's just an action item for the broader team to work on.
All right. I got one last little thing to share here just for fun before we wrap up on time. But okay. So I mentioned this earlier. My book is scheduled to be available in September. I'm just making a personal plea that I will be launching this. I would love help getting the word out to people. In particular, one of the things to know, several people on this call, your names are on the inside of the book, one place or another. Ads finds himself on the back of the book. Krishna and Sandy both gave me quotes that are on the inside flap. And on top of that, I'll just show this really quickly as well. This. When we get to the table of contents, chapter 2 is the OWASP top 10 for large language model applications. For those of you who've been here the whole time, this is not actually a review of the OWASP top 10 because I always figured that would change. And in fact, I'm sure it will change very shortly after publishing the book. It's actually the history of how we built the first version of the list. And so many of you people may find that just a fun little walk down memory lane. So I share this with everybody just for fun. I will be sharing details on the book launch on the channel just for anybody who wants to participate. But I wanted to say thanks in advance. That definitely, none of that would have happened without this group and everybody's efforts putting this together. So with that, we'll wrap up today's meeting. I'll say thanks again to everybody. Thanks for coming out and everybody watching on the podcast. See y'all later. Bye.
Thanks for checking out our bi-weekly meeting podcast. If you'd like to stay up to date on all of the latest news for the OWASP Top 10 for large language model applications, please click subscribe. And of course, we'd appreciate it if you'd share with a friend to grow our community. We'll see you in 2 weeks.